Alright, I am back with another video, and today we are doing the next in the all single class, full party build series, and that is Rangers. Now, there was a slight caveat to this, because as you know, all of, basically the comments dictate which class is covered next in this series. Now, while there was a single comment that had the most upvotes as a standalone comment and that was Druids, with, I think, about 34. There were 3 separate comments all asking for Ranger, and the combined upvotes of all those comments made it out to be more. So I decided to go with Ranger instead, since that technically was the more popular option, but if you really want me to do Druids next, just vote for it in the comments below. Anyways, so, as for an all-Ranger party, Rangers are quite interesting because they actually do have a lot of customization to them. Their spell lists are a little bit limited compared to other casters or even half casters in this game, so the spell lists when you're making for Rangers does somewhat come out to be the same in most cases, as not all of their spells are particularly useful. But the actual basically in-class customization and the subclass customization is very, very varied, with things like Natural Explorer, Favored Enemy, and also the subclasses themselves really do allow for a lot of customization. But when I do these party builds, I want to give them kind of a coherent theme. With the Paladin builds, it was like 3 younger Paladins and 1 old Master. For the Fighter build, it was like the Commandos, all that sort of thing. For this party, I thought, well, when you look at Rangers, what is the most common archetype for a Ranger? And that is a hunter type character, someone who explores the wilds and, is very good at taking down a particular type of creature. And then I thought to myself, well, why don't I make these guys a group of hunters that specialize in something? But then I thought, what exactly would be a good thing for these guys to hunt? And I mean, it kind of hit me, as it was really obvious when I thought about it. It's in the name. Dungeons and Dragons. So I decided to make a group of Dragon Slayers, and the more that I looked into it, the more that I kind of noticed that, hey, Ranger kind of has a lot of fun thematic elements for combating dragons, and we'll get into it as we go. As for the actual kind of backstories for the characters in this party, I kind of have 2 Underdark races here, and I think that has a lot of room for kind of interesting, backstory and lore stuff. Maybe there is some sort of deep dragon that made its lair in the Underdark and maybe forced these guys out of their homes, and now they're into the business of hunting it down as well as other dragons. We've got a half orc here that could have something to do with dragons, maybe, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to use a different race than I normally do, as well as a dragonborn here, which, I mean, of course, if you know the history of the Dragonborn, they've got a lot of reasons to dislike dragons, so I think you can make that fit fairly easily. No matter what, though, they come together as quite a coherent party for dealing with dragons, and I've kind of, like I said, worked the class and subclass features as well as the equipment to be suited for taking them down. So let's get into the actual builds. First up, we have our Dwagar here, who is kind of the frontliner for the party. I decided to go with a Dwagar here, but really any race will work. I just kind of knew I wanted to play a Dwarf, and the Dwagar has some sort of elements to it that I felt were pretty fun for this build. So this build's whole thing is kind of being the frontline big damage dealer. Now, even though I'm using a 2-handed weapon here, which is kind of what I would recommend, Ranger doesn't actually get great weapon fighting, so I've just slapped the defense style on here instead, as you can see. So, this guy's main deal is to be able to run into combat and just deal a bunch of damage and basically kind of be like a tank type character, which is why I've gone for the kind of 3 resistances that we get here. We've got fire, ice, and poison resistance, which actually comes from Dwarven Resilience, which is nice, meaning we don't have to take that as a Ranger. I've also gone for the Ranger feature, what's it called? Sanctified Knight. Basically the one that lets you get heavy armor proficiency. Which Ranger Knight, is that it? It's one of those. It's basically like, there is a kind of thing you can select that gives you heavy armor proficiency. So, of course, we're wearing heavy armor on this build. I've also with all of the with 3 of these builds, there is one exception. We actually do have a feat, and for the feat for this build, I've gone for Heavy Armour Master, which I've not featured on the channel before. It gives us an increase of 1 to our strength, so I started off with 17 strength on this build, and then it also makes it so that while we're wearing heavy armour, where is it? I've lost it. There it is. We reduce all damage from non-magical attacks by 3, so it just makes us quite a bit tankier. If a dragon is going to hit us with its multi-attacks, so a lot of biting and claw attacks, we're going to be able to take that damage pretty nicely. Ranger Knight, there it is. We also have Sanctified Stalker, allowing us to get Sacred Flame, which I just felt was kind of nice. I feel like, you know, it kind of gives us a bit of a paladin vibe. I've also picked up Steel Will because this is a Hunter Ranger. Hunter Ranger comes with a ton of things. You get like things like Colossus Slayer, and since, you know, dragons are big, I mean, they're not colossi, but it kind of works. Basically, once per turn, your weapon attack deals an extra 1d8 damage if the target is below its hit point maximum. So it's just more damage per turn, which is always great. We're also going to get things like, what else is here? Land Stride, difficult terrain, meaning the difficult terrain no longer slows us down. And Steel Will. Now, dragons are known for having a frightful presence kind of aura, and Steel Will gives you advantage on saving throws against being frightened. If you're going to be a Dragon Slayer, you want to be able to combat its specific abilities. And the dragon that you fight in the final boss of this game does actually have this ability, so it's kind of like a nice thematic moment towards the end of the game. We've also got... Oh, we do have Wasteland Wanderer Poison. Whoops, I wasn't meant to select that. That was a mistake. But yeah, we get Wasteland Wanderer, Cold, and Fire, but you would normally get Poison Resistance anyway from Dwarven Resilience, so you can pick up something else there. That was a mistake on my part. Anyways, as for the stats, we do have a 20 in Strength, starting off with 17 and giving it the Heavy Armour Master feat, as well as an ability score improvement. Dexterity is at 10, we don't really need it, we're tanky enough that initiative isn't really going to matter for us, and I needed to dump one of the kind of main stats here. As it's wearing Heavy Armour, Dexterity is fine. Constitution is at 16, just because it's going to allow us to tank a few more hits. Intelligence is at 8, we don't need it. Wisdom is at 18 for things like Ensnaring Strike, Conjure Barrage, all that good stuff. And also we have Wisdom at, Charisma at 8, because again, we don't really need it for this build. So, the main idea with this build is just to hit things really bloody hard, and even though you're a little guy, you can make yourself bigger with the Dwayguards enlarge to make it so you can stand toe-to-toe with even the greatest of beasts. Hunter Rangers also come with all the usual Ranger stuff, so Ensnaring Strike, Conjure Barrage, Hunter's Mark, which I think is going to be our main focus here, but it also comes with a couple of unique attacks like Whirlwind Attack, allowing you to strike out all nearby foes, basically kind of like Link from The Legend of Zelda, his like spin attack. It's basically that. I've also given all of these builds protection from energy, because it felt really on theme. Dragons attack with multiple different elements, so being able to on command get resistance to a dragon's elemental type that we don't already have is actually pretty great. So this could give us coverage against lightning, thunder, and acid, as well as cold and fire. So it just makes it so that no matter what dragon we're up against, we're going to be able to resist their hits, and I think that was quite fun thematically. But let's get into the rest of the build. We have, as our weapon of choice here, the Baldur's Giant Slayer. For the sake of time and not to make this video too long, I will not be listing many early game options in this video, because some of this equipment is from the later game. However, if you want early game options for the late game equipment that I am showing off in this video, it'll be in the description as always. So, Baldur's Giant Slayer basically means that on hit you double the damage from your strength modifier. Great. We also have advantage on attack rolls against large, huge, gargantuan creatures. Now, I know this is meant to go up against giants, but this is gained from slaying a dragon, and it works really well against dragons, all of its features do, so I felt like this was a perfectly great thematic weapon for a group of dragon slayers. It's a +3 legendary weapon that comes with a couple of unique features. The first one being a giant form. Grow to a fearsome size, your weapons deal an additional 1d6 damage, and you gain 27 temporary hit points and advantage on strength checks and saving throws. This lasts for 10 turns, and you can use it once per short rest. This does not stack with the Dwayguards Enlarge, unfortunately, but I did still kind of want to go with Dwayguard, so you get that kind of growing large kind of flavoring much earlier on than an endgame legendary weapon. But I kind of felt like, again, I liked this idea of this dwarven fighter or ranger, I guess in this case, who grows big enough to face a dragon's head on, too cool to pass up. But again, if you'd rather go for something like a gold dwarf for the extra HP, you absolutely can and still get this kind of growing giant thing when you get the weapon. We also have an ability called Topple the Big Folk, which does extra damage equal to our proficiency bonus, as well as against large, huge, or gargantuan creatures, it does extra damage. So again, it's going to just be great against dragons, and that is the whole point. I know it feels silly to base an entire party around an enemy type that we only fight once, or twice even in this whole game, but mods are coming. Console mods and official mod support is coming, so there may be more dragon encounters in our future. Who knows? I'm going to do a dedicated update video on that because I think that's really important for the channel, but never mind. Let's keep going. An early game option for this, though, and that I quite like is Jorgoral's Greatsword. It's basically a +1 Greatsword that has a cool design, but also does come with an extra unique attack that basically lets you do a little bit of extra damage and channel your meddlesome strength and strike all creatures in a line. Now, I will point out the elephant in the room here. Yes, you could drop Heavy Weapon Master for Great Weapon Master in this build, and obviously just become uber powerful. And of course you'd throw the risky ring on here to compensate for the penalties, but I just wanted to do something different, man. And I just like the idea of like the fact that we're really powerful anyway. We don't friggin' need that ability. We're still going to be hitting for massive amounts of damage, as you'll see in the combat footage. So I just wanted to go for something a bit different, and showing off a feat that I've not used on the channel before was something I wanted to go for. But anyways, let's move on to the rest of the equipment. First up, the Grim Skull Helm. It grants you resistance to fire damage. If you decide not to take it from Wasteland Wanderer, you can still get it this way. Gives you an extra usage of Hunter's Mark, but the main thing that we want it for is that critical hits cannot be landed against us. I just think that's a great ability for tanking. You can swap this out for something else if you like. Next up, the Dwarven Splint Mail. Again, we're a dwarf, we might as well wear their armor. We take 1 less piercing damage, which means the Dragon's Bite attack is going to have a bit more trouble against us. We also gain a +1 bonus to strength checks and saving throws. We have disadvantage on stealth checks, but we're not really trying to sneak with this build. And we also gain a +2 to our constitution, making us a lot more tanky. So you would have started off with a 14 in constitution, and this would bump it up to a 16. Next up, the Legacy of the Masters, giving us a +2 bonus to attack and damage rolls with weapons, just a flat damage bonus. And finally, the Acrobat Shoes, which gives us advantage on dexterity saving throw checks. This may seem like an odd choice, and you can swap this out if you like, but a lot of Dragon's Breath weapons do come with dexterity saving throws, so this helps with that. Next up, for the accessories, we have the Amulet of Misty Step. It was just a nice way to get a little bit of extra movement out of this build, so and this is kind of a throwaway slot. I was kind of having a bit of trouble figuring out what equipment to put on these builds, but I felt was actually useful, so I feel like the Amulet of Misty Step is just a good catch-all option. And next up we have the Strange Conduit Ring. We're pretty much always going to be wanting to concentrate on something, whether it be Hunter's Mark or Warden of Vitality, so let's get a little bit of extra damage for our troubles. And finally, the Ring of Regeneration. This is another throwaway slot, but a little bit of extra healing is always nice. However, if you go the Great Weapon Master route, swap this out for the risky ring to offset the penalty. And that is our first build. Again, not your very typical ranger. I deliberately did not include a ranged weapon on this build, just because you can kind of just pick your own if you want to have that on the build anyway, and I recommend that you do. So just kind of pick your favourite there. Next up on our list we have the Gloom-Stalker of the team, which is a drow. Made sense to me personally to make a drow Gloom-Stalker, and I don't make very many male drow on the channel, so I thought I would give it a go here. This is going to be our 2-weapon fighting style user, going for 2 finesse weapons here, so this is more of a dexterity build where the other one was strength based. I've also gone for the mobile feat for this build, because again I kind of liked the idea of this character being almost ninja-esque, being very fast moving, able to deal a ton of attacks, and being very, mobile. Like I said here, and being able to jump around and dash around and all that sort of thing. And also, I wanted to pair this build with like one of the Beastmaster Ranger summons, which I'll get to in a minute, but you'll kind of see what I was going for when we get to that portion of the video. So, let's get into it. Starting off with the weapons, we have the Justiciar's Scimitar, a +2 light finesse scimitar, which is going to give you a chance of blinding your target if you attack with advantage, which we will be able to do very consistently with this build. As well as in the offhand, we have the Knife of the Undermounting King, another +2 weapon, which reduces the number we need to roll a critical hit when attacking by 1, so we can now critical hit on a 19 or higher. Whenever you roll 2 damage or less, reroll the die, taking the highest result, and we also have advantage on attack rolls against lightly or heavily obscured enemies. Well, there you go. These two kind of work together really nicely. So with this, paired with the Beastmaster Ranger's Corvid summon, the Dire Raven, we're going to have the ability to basically create darkness all over the battlefield. Drow get innate darkness once per long rest, but the Crow can set it off every time it flies. So the idea is blinding all of our opponents and then striking them from the shadows, which I felt was really, really interesting and kind of a fun and unique combination. So let's get into the actual equipment. First up, we have the Steel Watcher Helmet, basically here to make it so we cannot be blinded, and we also have advantage on Constitution saving throw checks. This will help us maintain our concentration options, such as protection from energy, Pass Without Trace, or Hunter's Mark. Next up, we have the Armour of Agility, adding your full dexterity modifier to your armor class. Additionally, this armor does not impose disadvantage on stealth checks, with a +2 to saving throws. Overall, this is going to give us a ton of AC, making us very hard to hit, especially when we're sitting in clouds of darkness, meaning that enemies have disadvantage to hit us. Another game option that I was playing around with is the Shade Clinger armor, which will give you advantage on all saving throws while obscured. This can just be a fun one to use until you get the Armor of Agility. Next up, we have the Fleet Fingers. Again, this is kind of a throwaway slot, put whatever you like on here, but I really liked these gloves thematically. Once per turn after the wearer dashes or takes a similar action, they can jump without using a bonus action, making you very, very nimble. And finally, the Boots of Speed, allowing you to use click heels to dash as a bonus action and also impose disadvantage on opportunity attacks against you. Basically, this character is going to be able to move around the map pretty well, using the Corvid to fly after them, creating darkness clouds wherever it lands. You guys can basically become this traveling darkness duo. And I kind of like the idea of making the Gloom-Stalker pair up with another member of the team's summon, because god, could you imagine if the Gloom-Stalker got the Corvid summon just as part of that kit? That would be so fun. Speaking of Corvids, the Corvid token. Not only are we going to be able to pair up with a Corvid, we're also going to be able to have one, be able to turn into one. While wearing this amulet, the wearer's jump and flying speed increases by 1.5 meters, and they gain the Featherfall condition. Featherfall's effect will persist while polymorphed or wild-shaped. So, with all the jumping around we're going to be doing, we're going to have constant Featherfall, which is great. This also comes with the ability to polymorph into a Dire Raven, allowing us to kind of use that for flavor purposes, as well as being able to get around the map. So I just felt like it was pretty fun, so I wanted to pick it up here. I've got the Ring of Blink, again, kind of going for that almost like shadowy ninja vibe. The Ring of Blink basically allows us to become completely ethereal and then reappear at will, attacking from the shadows in a bit of a different way. And then also we have the Shadow Cloaked Ring. The wearer's weapon and unarmed strikes deal an additional 1d4 damage against slightly or heavily obscured creatures. So again, we're creating darkness clouds. Anyone in that darkness cloud is going to take an extra d4 of damage. Feels pretty good. Again, you could put a ranged weapon on this build if you like. There's nothing else really to discuss here. As a Gloom-Stalker, we're going to get Dread Ambusher, which is going to allow us to gain a +3 bonus to our initiative rolls and make an extra attack at the start of combat that deals an additional 1d8 damage. Always great. I've also gone for Beast Tamer, so we can summon Find Familiar and get another Raven. Even though it's completely useless, it's really fun. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about specifically relating to this build. Oh yeah, we also do get a unique thing that I don't really ever get to show off on this channel called Stalker's Flurry. You are swift enough to turn a miss into a new strike. Whenever you miss with a weapon attack, you can make another weapon attack for free. So even if we miss, we can keep attacking, just meaning that we're going to be very, very dangerous in combat. Overall, I quite like this build. I like the idea of actually basically making a build that is specifically designed to work with a different classes feature, with a different subclass feature. So I was quite happy with how this turned out. Let's move on to the Beastmaster Ranger that I was just talking about. This one I'm calling the Corvid Whisperer because it's deliberately meant to work with the Raven summon. So the idea is this build itself is completely independent from its summon, meaning that the Corvid can go fly off and do whatever it wants to do, working with the Gloom-Stalker, while this build has its own role to fulfill within the party. In this case, I decided to go for a throwing weapon build just to keep things slightly more interesting. And when you're making a throwing weapon build, there's nothing more interesting than the Nirolna. Basically, this is a legendary trident, +3, dealing an extra 1d6 light thunder damage on hit, and whenever this weapon is thrown, it will return to your hand, a bit like Eldritch Knight's favourite weapon. You cannot be forced to drop the trident, and when thrown, the weapon creates an explosion that deals an extra 3 to 12 thunder damage in a 6-meter blast centered on the target. be warned, this can hit your allies. You also gain a 3-meter bonus to movement speed and jump distance, making you a bit more nimble, and this weapon also gives you immunity to falling damage. So if you decide you do want to get up and run around with your summon and the Gloom-Stalker, you absolutely can keep up with them. Although this weapon does glow, but you can turn that off. This one also comes with 2 unique attacks, the first one being Zephyr Flash, allowing you to rush forward, creating an air vortex that deals 68 thunder damage and can inflict bleeding. It doesn't provoke opportunity attacks as well. And also Zephyr Break, allowing you to emit a powerful gale that can deal 66 thunder damage and knock enemies off balance. So you've got a pretty stellar kit in just one weapon. So the idea with this build is you're going to be teleporting and jumping around while throwing this thing from high distances to do massive damage. But since this is going to use the dueling fighting style, since the trident can be wielded in one hand, I've also decided to throw on the absolute protector shield, giving us access to fire shield chill, meaning that we have another way of combating those pesky dragons. Again, the idea here is that you're able to throw the trident to pierce the weak spots in the dragon's hide, making it vulnerable to attacks from the rest of the party, which I quite like. And I suppose the Gloom-Stalker's part in the whole dragon slaying thing is going to be, again, kind of attacking weak points, being able to blind the dragon by having flying summons kind of buzz around it, and then being able to strike critical weak points, such as the eyes, or the throat, or maybe even, like, inside the mouth, or something like that. Things that, like, maybe in between the toes, or, you know, like, oh, you know, when you, like, get a paper cut on, like, your finger crotch, like that's what the Gloom-Stalker is going to do to dragons, and it's going to suck for them. But of course, an early game option, because this is an Act 3 weapon, would actually be the Returning Pike, which basically is just a 2-handed pike that has a +1 enchantment that also returns to the owner when it is thrown. So it just keeps that throwing weapon playstyle alive, but until you get Vanal Runa, although you cannot wield the shield with it. So let's get into the equipment. First up, we have the Dark Justiciar helmet. You have a +1 bonus to saving throws against spells, and while you are obscured, you have a lowered critical hit threshold, so you can hit a crit on a 19 or higher. You will have the ability to hide in the darkness created by either the Gloom-Stalker or the Corvid with this build, and as such, you are going to be able to take advantage of that ability. Next up, the 1T scale mail, basically adding our full dexterity modifier to our armor class, and does not impose disadvantage on stealth checks, and gives you a +1 bonus to initiative rolls. Basically just able to make you more combat ready, and it's also one of my favourite armors stylistically, so I wanted to show it off here. Yes, we don't really have enough dex to take full advantage of the unlimited AC, but our AC still works out pretty nice with this build, but you can play around with the stats if you want. I wanted to max out strength here, just so we could have more damage on our throws, but if you wanted to bump that down a little bit and go for dex instead to bump up that AC to 20, you absolutely can. Next up, the throwing build staples, and I'll cover these both at the same time. First up, the gloves and uninhibited Kashigo, and the Ring of Flinging, both of which will add a d4 to our throw damage, so that's 2d4 total. And finally, the Disintegrating Nightwalkers, meaning you cannot be enwebbed, entangled, or ensnared, and cannot slip or grease or ice, meaning you have full maneuverability around the battlefield, and you can also use Misty Step to, once per short rest, to instantly teleport to a position that's good for throwing, giving you that with the initiative bonuses that you have. You're going to have a great setup turn right at the start. Next up, moving on to the accessories, and the amulet here is kind of just for flavor. Amulet of the Wind Rider is going to give you access to Ride the Winds, which is essentially gaseous form, as well as Gust of Wind to knock enemies off balance. It's kind of mainly just playing into the kind of stormy thunder theme that the Nalruna brings, so I just wanted to show it off here, but you can totally swap this out for anything you like. I've already gone over the Ring of Flinging, so the last thing here is the Eversight Ring, making you immune to being blinded, giving you full synergy with the other aspects of this build. Namely, and we'll go over this now, our little crow companion, the Dire Raven. Why did I call it a crow and then call it a raven immediately after? I don't know, I'm tired, it's been a long day. Basically this guy at max level is quite a beast. You're able to summon additional ravens to assist you, you can curse enemies, and as well as make them blind through rend vision. However, once you reach a high enough level, whenever you fly, you create a cloud of darkness beneath you, and these last for a decent chunk of time, meaning that you're able to fly all over the map and blind enemies left, right, and center, which synergizes with the equipment that we have on the Gloom-Stalker and this main build, meaning that we're able to get advantage on a ton of attacks and keep our our allies safe, while keeping our targets in the dark. So I feel like this is a pretty fun synergy to have. Now this build here is the Beastmaster that is mainly focused on a single summon, whereas this Beastmaster is more generalized. Obviously, with these single class party builds, I have to, in the case that, you know, a class doesn't have enough subclasses, I have to repeat a subclass somewhere. I was originally going to do 2 hunters, with the other hunter focusing on breaking down groups of multiple enemies with things like Horde Breaker, multi-attack defense, or escape the horde, and such like that. However, in the end I decided that the Beastmaster that I did have was a bit too specialized, so I wanted to create a more generic Beastmaster that can make use of all of the summoned companions in some way, including a second Dire Raven if you really want overkill, but this one is meant to use more kind of generalized beasts. Again, if you're going to have Beastmaster Rangers fighting dragons, you're going to want allies who are capable of tanking damage away from the rest of the party just in case, and as such I think the Bear Summon is great, but if you really wanted to go for something that's more of a team player, go for the Wolf Summon. If you want more battlefield control, go for the Spider Summon. You have a lot of options here. If you want to just Hulk out and rage and have a fun time, go for the Boar Summon. It's entirely up to you what you want to pick here, but this is more of a generalized Beastmaster Ranger build.
Still alive?
Now this is the build that's going to use the archery fighting style, so I have opted to focus on the ranged weapons with this build, but again, any of these builds can use both melee and ranged, so feel free to fill in the gaps where you like. As such, we do have the archery fighting style here. We're also going to be using Crossbow Expert on this build, allowing us to, even with our ranged weapons, be able to survive close range combat. Again, a dragon can close the distance on you in pretty much an instant, and while your crossbow shots are going to be able to pierce its hide, you are going to want to make sure you are ready for when it's suddenly on top of you, and then maybe, when you're at point blank range, you can aim for weak spots. That's kind of the game plan here. So, let's get into the equipment. The main weapon I'm going to suggest here is the Fabricated Arbalest. This weapon has 2 things that are really going to help you fight dragons, because again, if we want to kind of go upon the idea of trying to blind our enemies. Again, blinding a dragon is one of the best things you can do against it, so unless they have blindness immunity, in which case... Uh-oh. I never considered that. 1 second. Okay, yes, no, you can blind them. It's an effective strategy. I can't believe I just googled that mid-video. Don't you just love how professional my videos are, and how many times I've made this exact joke? Anyways, let's get into the equipment. Like I said, the Fabricated Arbalest is going to come with 2 unique ways to blind your enemies if the darkness thing just ain't working out for you. For example, if the dragon keeps flying out of the clouds of darkness, you're going to want other ways to make it blind even without them. Dazzling Ray basically unleashes a weaker version of Sunbeam that can blind all creatures in its path, as well as Illuminating Shot is going to inflict Radiating Orb each time you attack with it, and it can be done as a bonus action, so you're always going to have a bonus action attack with this build. It deals a little bit of damage, and Radiating Orb basically gives the enemy a penalty to their attack rolls, meaning it's much easier to kind of manipulate the dragon's attacking patterns, for example. An early game option there would be the Giant Breaker, meaning that you can send the target reeling whenever you hit them, which basically also gives them a penalty to attack rolls. So it kind of does the same thing, but the Fabricated Arbalest is overall more powerful. Getting into the rest of the equipment, we have a piece of equipment that I'm pretty sure I've not shown off before. You get a 1d4, it's called the Circlet of Hunting, giving you a 1d4 bonus to attack rolls against creatures marked by Hunter's Mark, True Strike, Fairy Fire, or Guiding Bolt. We're a party of rangers. Everyone's using Hunter's Mark. It's a free extra chance to hit. If you decide you want to go with Sharpshooter instead of Crossbow Expert, this definitely helps. Next up, we have the Sharpened Snare Cuirass. It's a ranger party. Of course I was going to use this one. This one also adds our full dexterity modifier to our armor class, as well as and allows creatures to have disadvantage on saving throws when resisting your attacks or spells that inflict restraint, so Ensnaring Strike is way more likely to hit. This is literally the ranger armor, and colouring it in black and red just looks absolutely gorgeous, especially on a black dragonborn, which comes with acid resistance, by the way. Just a neat little tidbit there. Next up, the Gloves of Archery. This is basically just going to add an additional 2 damage to all of our ranged weapon attacks. Can't argue with that. And finally, I wasn't really sure what boots to place on this build, so I've just gone with the Evasive Shoes to give us a +1 to our Armor Class and Acrobatics as well to help us dodge those fire breaths, giving us a total of 19 AC overall, which I think is good enough for this build. Next up, for the equipment, for the accessories even, we have the Unflinching Protector Amulet. Again, we are working with a Beastmaster companion, so being able to protect that companion from any type of damage as a reaction once per short rest just felt nice and on theme. But it also works for any of our other party members as well. We've also got the Caustic Band. This is a throwaway slot, put whatever you like in here. This allows our weapon attacks to deal an additional 2 acid damage. And finally, the Keepsake Ring, which is going to give us access to Dominate Beast, which felt pretty on theme for a Beastmaster Ranger, basically allowing you to dominate a beast, forcing it to fight alongside you, unless it makes a wisdom saving throw against you. Pretty sure most beasts aren't going to be great at wisdom saving throws, but hey, what do I know? I don't think there's much else to talk about with this build. Again, pretty much all of the range of features we select. I mean, you can see I've got the 3 Wasteland Wanderers here to give us 4 resistances, which is quite nice. But as far as the kind of, for any of these builds, as far as the favored enemy and natural explorer type stuff, you can just kind of pick whatever you like. It's not really going to be a huge issue. In fact, you could take a Ranger Knight on all of these guys and give them all heavy armor. It's entirely up to you, so you're kind of free to pick and choose there. Again, this build is pretty good with using any beast from the Beastmaster Ranger. I personally like good old Bear here, giving us access to things like the ability to summon reinforcements in the form of an additional bear, which is here. We also gain Goading Roar, meaning that enemies are goaded into attacking the bear, as well as Honeyed Paws, forcing enemies to drop weapons. Not as great for dragons, but it also works. Again, you can summon things like wolves, spiders, boars, whatever you want with this build. It's entirely up to you. It's just more of a generalized combatant that can work with the animal. I decided not to use things like the Abyss Beckoners, which make you know, your companions resistant to all damage, because while that is great, it does make them mad, and I felt like that didn't really fit the vibe of the Beastmaster Ranger, almost kind of like putting your beloved companion into a psychotic state. But if you feel like you can make that work, feel free to go for that instead. But yeah, that is all of the builds. I don't think there's much else to say here. This is a pretty solid party overall. You have a ton of bodies on the board to basically do a ton of damage or tank a ton of hits, giving this party great staying power. We have our main big attacking guy who's going to be doing most of the damage, which always works out quite nicely. We've got the Gloom-Stalker who's going to be able to hide in the shadows and come out with big damage with the things like Shadow Soaked Blow and the like. And we also have a great centralized team strategy utilizing darkness. Now, don't get me wrong, obviously not all of our summons or even 2 of our party members have immunity to blinded, so do be careful, but these guys will excel in combat where you're against a lot of different enemies, in which you can kind of specialize and take care of certain ones, or again, if you're up against a big boss like a dragon, these guys can easily take it down using the various strategies available to them. That was kind of the theming here, but overall, again, it's just a solid overall party composition. Rangers are a class that are more likely to be single class builds anyway, especially if you are going the Beastmaster route, because you basically have to go to level 11 with Beastmaster to really make it viable. So it wasn't too hard to really come up with, you know, solid builds here, because again, Rangers are kind of designed to go that high. I mean, again, if I was the one making this game, I would have made a lot of the level 11 features for Beastmaster bump down a peg to about level 7, but hey, with the official modding tools come out, I might just be able to provide that for you guys. We'll see. I do intend to try and make modded content on the channel again, whether when the official mod tools come out I actually make the mods myself and then showcase them. I'll probably start with things like simple like weapon and armor mods, and then get into more complicated stuff as I learn the tools. But I'm definitely thinking modded builds are going to return to the channel, maybe even ahead of the official update. There's a closed beta in July, which if I am lucky enough to get into, I will try and sign up for that, and maybe my YouTube street cred could help with that, who knows. I will be very happy to make content on mods with those tools as early as I can, as well as the fact that I would like to obviously cover modded content on the channel again. It's looking like that we are going to be able to do class and subclass mods with the new modding tools, so I'm going to maybe start looking into doing modded builds again, as obviously when that all comes out officially in September, but I might experiment with modded builds again beforehand, so that PC players can use them now, but then console players can use them when the update comes out later in September. I really hope you look forward to seeing modded content on this channel again. I'm really looking forward to it. There's not much else really to say. I mean, the combat footage for this one was a bit long, as the full party build ones just tend to be. But I think I am going to leave you here with the combat footage. Again, I've had a bit of a long day today, so I think I'm going to end this recording session a bit sooner rather than later, but good things on the horizon, like I said. I'm really looking forward to the modded content. I think that's going to be really fun. I'm going to be continuing the Pokemon Trainer Challenge run and the Pathfinder streams. Pathfinder was very, very interesting because, I mean, it's a fun new system to learn, but it has seemed to have drawn in a new crowd of Pathfinder fans to the channel, so I'm definitely looking forward to covering it more here, because I'd quite like to expand my audience a little bit and expand my portfolio into new ranges, so I'm going to be experimenting with that as well, so look forward to more Pathfinder in the future. Right, that's all I have to say for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.